All right. Well, we're up to 27. Maybe Yannicka, I'll kind of just start off, and then we'll get going into the details of it. So, welcome everybody to. I don't know if this is number 3 of the Tech Hubs Tech Tuesday webinars, and I'm really appreciative for everybody to join us today, and excited to be able to showcase and show off some of the great things that the City of Ottawa folks are doing in the area of digital twins and GIS work. So I will, in a few minutes, I'll post the bios and the link. The link off of the ITS Canada website has the detailed bios of our 3 speakers. I won't go into all of that, so that way we maximize the amount of time for them to be able to talk and show you all the work that they're doing. But we have 3 speakers. First will be Randall Roger. Randall is program manager for our geospatial analytics technology and solutions team. He's the leader of the Ottawa's Digital Twin program and spearheads the transformation of the city's aerial imagery, vector mapping operations into a reality capture ecosystem integrating LiDAR, drones, terrestrial scanning, and mobile mapping. Next, you'll hear from Jean-François Dion, who's program coordinator for our GIS. JF is spearheading the initiative to be able to build out the OTwin, the city's digital twin, which is a groundbreaking 3D urban scape that earned him a Esri 2023 Special Achievement in GIS Award. He's been a proven leader with years and years of experience, and the more details on his bio are there. And then you'll also hear from Dr. Michael Martin, who's a geospatial strategist here at the city. Michael has worked for years on things such as founding a nonprofit addressing GIS digital divide, publishing research on reality capture, co-founding companies, and he's focused on frontier things in our digital twin technologies with a 4D environment focusing on digital twins. So with that, I said we'd try to keep this into the 5 minutes to get as much time as possible. I'd like to, on behalf of the Tech Hub directors, welcome everybody. And Randall, turn it over to you. And I think, Michael, you were sharing the screens. Perfect. Excellent.
Yeah,
all yours.
Great. Thanks for that, Omar. Thanks for the invite to the committee. Happy to be here on behalf of my team. We just go with GATS. It's much easier to remember, but that's fine to spell the full title, because I know we can get into acronyms quickly. But yeah, here on behalf of my team, and obviously we have the introductions for everybody, but JF and Michael, who have been instrumental in moving this program forward. I liked Omar's enthusiasm to say that we'll cover everything that we're doing on the digital twin, but unfortunately, I don't think we'll be able to do that. But we'll give you our best to kind of skip a stone across the top of that and give you a flavor of what we've been up to, and we've been up to quite a bit. So we have a little title. We've done a number of presentations, but we're going to zero in on what you folks have asked us to talk about. So I'm going to start off with kind of a more management focus, and then pass it over to JF. We'll talk about the OTwin and the work he's doing with focusing on the reality capture, and then Michael with a deeper dive into our mobile mapping program. So we'll skip over to the next slide. Perfect. All right, so that worked well. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you where we are for following how we fall within the infrastructure, or sorry, the org chart within the City of Ottawa. We are within the Planning, Development, and Building Services Department within a group called Right Away. We've been kind of unique in one sense because we are onto our 4th general manager. So I think that bodes well for the fact that we've had such great support with everyone on our digital twin. There's a header for my team, and we're broken into, I'll call it 4 units. So we have geospatial projects and operations, and that team is focused on developing the new zoning bylaw consolidation. So they've been heavily at work on that. There's probably 300 schedules, and all the ones that were describing 3D information were shown in 2D, and we've converted those all to 3D and entered them into the model. So that's been going on for about 3 years, and anyone who's been in the province of Ontario, and you've probably seen a lot of changes from Doug Ford and his administration around Housing Accelerator Fund, which we've been hard at work at, to the new zoning bylaw. So there's been a lot of change in those rules, so which has been a unique situation as we're trying to develop our new zoning bylaw. We have a geospatial information center. So that's about all the underground utilities. That's a partnership with the local utility companies. So we take all their information and centralize that and push that back out, and that integrates with our work order management system. So we're not only talking about predictive and policy, but boots on the ground maintenance for the municipality. And then the geospatial intelligence, and JF is going to show you. I won't go into detail of that right now because he'll give you a deeper dive. And then geospatial strategists who are focusing on key processes, getting them up and ground as we put it into the day-to-day workflow and business processes. So that's a quick run through of the team. And I just wanted to kind of leave you with the fact that we are embedded within PDBS, but you'll see that we're supporting operations and data across the corporation, which I think is really key. And as well, we're the GIS support for the Emergency Operations Center, which the Digital Twin is playing a key role in that environment. So we'll switch to the next slide. This is we're GIS, we're geographers. Ottawa is a fairly big geographical area for a city. It's an amalgamated city, so that happened a number of years ago, but nearly 2,800 square kilometers. So we have right downtown in the tall buildings in our urban core. We have Parliament, so special restrictions in those areas. Through the green belt, which is unique, which bounds that core urban area, and then satellite cities, the suburban area, to deep forests. So we have forest farms and fields, a lot of area. So we have a large collection program, and that gets into the fidelity of the data. So we try to collect once, but collect efficiently and economically. So in the downtown core, you want super highly accurate 3D models and obliques. You don't need that same level of detail in farm fields. But we do collect citywide and adjust the resolution to meet business needs depending on the environment that we're capturing. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a flavor of the scale and scope, that we're not just building a few small buildings. We're doing a large geography as part of this program. So we'll skip over to the next slide. Obviously, you need a mission and a vision. I put out a fairly lengthy thing there, but really, we're spatially anchored. That's kind of our background on the team as geospatial information. But we had a mandate from council. So if you're familiar with an official plan, that's kind of the vision of how you want the city to grow and develop. Is it affordable? Is it livable? Is it walkable? All those great things. Is it a resilient city? Do people feel comfortable in there? So those are all mixed in to that vision of how we're building it out. So the OP is that future-looking document, and that needs an approval process, and councillors can make an amendments to that. And one of the amendments that they put forward, that we use a digital twin to provide visualization and numerical analysis, which was great because we had already started on a journey with our official plan, where in year one it was policy documents, and one of those was building a digital twin to support that. That was passed, and we got our second round of funding to help fund the digital twin. So when you have something as significant as a new zoning bylaw, you have resources, and you have council approval as part of your official plan to make sure a digital twin supports all the work that you do. Those were two key drivers to getting this up and running and moving forward, and that helped drives us forward. So, and then the Housing Accelerator Fund, we also acquired financing through that to help drive us forward. So obviously you need the support political from senior management, and you need the funding to move that ahead. So that kind of got us up and running on our journey. If we slip over to the next slide, it's a bit of information kind of on the purpose, or you could say our goals. One of the things that we try to do as we're building is to be able to support people in the here and the now. So we're supporting the EOC. It's about smart city technology. It's transparency and public engagement. So pushing that data out, or it could be something as simple as enabling people who are scanning salt domes. So we went in, scanned that for them with the technology, and then we were saving them $60,000 a year, which was the price of the one-time purchase of the gear. So we're always looking at ways where we can reduce the city's expenses. So we're not trying to eliminate jobs. We're trying to make us more efficient, because everybody knows, budgets. We're trying to keep the cost down. So we're trying to do more with our dollars and spread them out and collaboration, and you'll see that. So really, we're not thinking of a digital twin just simply as a 3D model, but how can we help operations? How can it become predictive? And you'll see how we're tying into other parts of the system, but it's really an overall smart city strategy. So we'll flip over to the next one. It's always, we have a citywide data strategy. The city applied for some funding under the Bloomberg initiative. We have the support from the mayor, city manager, right down through the data lines. But again, it's tied to those overall. So we were already doing this. We already talked about economic development, resiliency, mobility, and livability. So we're directly tied into that enterprise citywide data strategy. We're already looking for improving data integration. That's a cornerstone of geospatial work. And if you think back to the second slide about the team, you see how we're already involved in planning, infrastructure, asset management, emergency operations. So it's really kind of home running those technology and making sure they integrate and work together, reducing the timelines for updates. So just trying to be more efficient, more accurate. And then overall data literacy. So we want transparency and push that out. And through our new zoning bylaw, we've put up interactive maps. So you can, how will the character of my neighborhood change based on the new zoning bylaw? So I have a current buildable envelope in my neighborhood overlaid with the future one, and I can see how much that change might impact my neighborhood. So taking tables and policy and converting them into visualization, so you can see in an instant what the potential impact is on your neighborhood, or if really we don't predict that much impact due to the changes in the new zoning bylaw. So it's important to align with our strategy and policies, whether they're digital security policies or an overall citywide data strategy. So we'll flip one next slide. It's very important to integrate partners' data. So obviously we mentioned the external partners, all the utility companies. It could be systems. We're building a new land management solution. We're looking at AI for integration for permit approvals, to mobility services. So just a whole ton of data. And what we talk about is when you're looking at 2D data, all your line work connects. When we turned it in 3, you can see quickly issues. So we're not saying our data perfect, but we're putting systems and operations in place to improve those workflow and turn around the time between when it's infrastructure or buildings are added to showing those in our model. So adding BIMs is part of our approval process, but a ton of data and a ton of integration. So lots of work on that front for the team. So if we flip to the next slide. This is just about our digital twin journey. And I talked about kind of that passive twin where it's really just a 3D model. And we're moving beyond that. So we're heading toward predictive. So adding IoT, making things programmable so I can look at alternate solutions, to autonomic where the system is keeping track of itself. So that's kind of our vision as we're moving forward, but we've spent a lot of time building that framework, and we're continuing to do that so that, if there's traffic issues, it can reroute things on the fly. So looking at a more fulsome integration, we look in the past where we do a land use study and we would wait 5 years for an update. That's glacial time. Cities operate much, much faster, and we have a higher expectation for data turnaround time. So that's kind of where we're heading in our journey. So we're just moving out of passive predictive and heading into the programmable and autonomic, and Mike will give you some examples of how we're doing that in JF. So we'll flip to the next one. Next slide. Yeah, so this just is a quick journey map. I'm almost about to wrap up here because I want to make sure I have time for Michael and JF for their interesting stuff. But, you know, moving from the foundation, putting together new zoning bylaw, and then starting now where we are, integration of IoT. So we put servers in place. We're putting the storage in place for the real time. Working on a housing accelerator fund, so AI to deal with that, to heading out to a public interfacing setup and GeoAI. So tons of work has happened, but that just gives you a timeline of the journey. And as I said, at every point, we're trying to make sure we're efficient, improving operations, leading to a more livable, sustainable city. So that's just a quick overview of the timeline. And we'll switch to the next slide. So I won't get into the details on the architecture. Probably a lot of people, maybe their eyes would glaze over, but just really wanted to talk about its city scale, high performance architecture. And it's, you know, an order of magnitude larger and more complex than traditional GIS. So we're working with our partners in IT to make sure we have that environment as a backbone to support today and our future growth. Moving away from talking about CPUs to GPUs. So if you're following the news, it's like, you know, we're excited about the quantum chips that are coming out from Google. So it's a huge volume of data. You need to process it quickly, and you need to make it available for people to work with and benefit in their day-to-day jobs. But that's, you know, we're looking at cloud storage, we're looking at internal, it's upgrading the network. So lots of work to have that environment to support the digital twin today and moving forward. And that's always about proving the value. So we're always concerned with what's the value it brings to the corporation. And I think you can see that it's right through every operation. Pretty much everyone at the city can benefit from this information, from looking at our aerial photos or photorealistic 3D mesh to, you know, how is our infrastructure performing and as we're putting into the ground. So I think that's a really, really quick fire hose of information, but hopefully it sets you up nicely to see what we've built and where we're going. And I'll pass it over to JF.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randall. So I'll go through a quick review of the foundation. From 2021 and upwards, we took over the existing old school aerial surveys that were managed by our surveys and mapping group and completely modernized the way we collected our data. We do it so for this year is yearly at 6 centimeter, citywide yearly. And from that imagery, we generate eye overlap data collection. So we regenerate our 3D mesh yearly for a 3D visualization of our complete base map. We do eye density 45 to 50, 70 points per square meter in our urban core, and then it goes down to a little less resolution in our rural areas. That data is GeoAI. We use GeoAI to extract features, rebuild schematics for our building structures. So we do change detection yearly on all our build forms. We do GeoAI on our forestry land, and this year with our latest LiDAR, we will do a full review of our urban canopy, mostly in our urban area, but we also have a study going into the complete review of our forest canopy citywide. We've developed a new drone mapping program. We have now multiple rotary wings and fixed wings with multiple types of sensors ranging from electro-optical, RGB, infrared, thermal, to LiDAR payloads that we can use in multiple types of environments and conditions for various localized surveys. We are hoping to become compliant operators in 2026, giving us the ability to fly beyond line of sight across our region. We've operationalized some of our ground terrestrial scanning from typical total station. We now scan at scale, massive point cloud collection over short areas. We do quick collection, bring it in the office, and do feature extractions. Obviously mobile mapping is something that we've been curating and looking at for the last couple of years, and so Michael will discuss that in a few minutes. Next slide. Here's some examples of what Michael will be talking. You know, AI, ML extraction. Discuss the actual hardware that we've acquired. Some of the work we're doing with our point cloud classification at street level, and obviously all the depth of pixel and how we can extract that information and make it valuable for all of our city departments. Next slide. And all of this is setting on a GNSS correction network that we started implementing a year and a half or 2 years ago, to really have every collection platform in the city having the same level of accuracy. So we have a geodetic, precise, accurate platform, so that any data coming into the digital twin has the same scale and positional accuracy across the city, whether you're in close to the Marlborough Forest or you're in on Wellington in front of the Parliament. Everything fits together. So we have we're growing that network over time, and all of our inspectors now have access through their GNSS systems and handheld device to a few centimeters citywide. So as Randall mentioned, we started with a passive twin, connecting to existing data lakes across the city. We're making use of a lot of our existing geospatial assets, but with this new 3D base map, we can now bring everything into a completely different view. We can see from point A to point B in every single position and have a full virtual view of the city. Some examples of the use cases that we've been publishing on our OTwin, which is our web-enabled 3D viewer across our internal users. Some of our activities are scenario modeling, bringing in BIM, building information models from our architects on development review, evaluating shade across an area, massing in real time, and developing sightlines on existing or future scenarios where we have protected sightlines or limited height podiums in some areas of the city. Here's another example of a BIM integrated in our digital twin. We have developed through the process some submission requirements for our architectural and engineering partners, so that they can build in a compatible form to our twin. We've obviously adopted the OGC and ISO standards, including the IFC standard for BIM, so that everybody speaks the same language when we are working with 3D files. Now going to the next step, we're looking at taking a set of criterias and building scenarios almost in real time. Looking at a table, this is the table 7 on all our transects in the official plan. It is very stale. It's a set of numbers and guides on what a certain limit can be attained on a parcel or in a street level minor or major corridor in a specific transect in the city. We take these tables, convert them into procedural models, and apply them to our city base. So here's an example of a subset of the city where you can have the setbacks, the height, the maximum heights, minimum heights on every parcels in the city. This is an area where we are building capacity now, where we are building additional sets of metrics that will pull in from various studies, including transportation, our transportation master plan, our infrastructure and asset master plan, so that we can start driving true, almost real-time metrics from the new studies that are prepared across the city. This is an example of what we did 2 years ago to demonstrate what the new neighborhood residential N1 to N6 would affect an existing viewshed in a local streetscape. So we modeled the existing and the future bylaw limits on those parcels, and we're able to showcase that to the public. We actually have all that data available on our ottawa.ca website. But in the process, what we did is we also operationalized all this process and created all of our schedule in full 3D. So now instead of looking at a schedule always top down, you can visualize what space is available for each of the parcels in some of the areas where we have height limits in our zoning bylaw. And this piece makes connection with our real-time network, our 3D models, going to the geoinformation center where we're pulling all of our underground utilities, where field staff collect in almost real time, in centimeter grade accuracy, can validate their data in the office. The data is enriched and moved through our IBM Maximo and SAP asset management system and back to the field. So either using AR and MR, augmented reality and mixed reality, using an application called vSight, where I can just take a tablet and look at what's happening underground, or update the data if it's misaligned while we're constructing or while we're daylighting. We can update that information and it goes through the full chain of asset management. We're undergoing a 2 to 3 year update on all of our water system, and this process is I think we've did a full asset inspection this year of about 20,000 existing manholes, valves, and hydrants across the city with this new method. And so we're hoping to push this technology across many more departments in the next couple of years. And I think this is my last slide. This year we are pushing at creating a programmable, living, dynamic, interdepartmental situational twin, where we bring live information from our existing live feed. And to do so, we will do a review of what we already have as IoT devices in our different assets and departments, and slowly bring them online, obviously securing them and making sure there's no liabilities at sharing those streams across our twin. But some examples are our clean water pumps, SCADA systems. We have a large network of rain gauges and live streams. Obviously, the real-time GTFS RT, traffic CCTVs, live CCTVs from our transit and traffic department, and our fleet services geotab system. So there's a lot of data out there that we can bring into that twin and make it a living and dynamic situational system for just not one department, but corporately and shared across the various departments. I think that's it for me, right?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you, Randall and Jeff, for the intro, and thank you, Omar, for inviting us to speak here. I wanted to do something for this group that was a bit of a deep dive into one of the pieces of technology that we've been kind of pioneering at the city, and that is the mobile mapping program. As you can imagine, before we started in mobile mapping, we had either small scale for hand scanning with our SLAM scanners, or tripod mounted kind of more survey end of the pipeline with our RTC 360 made by Leica. But as we tried to do more corridor projects, such as several kilometers of a street at a time, it became unwieldy and impractical to actually try and move that down the street in a one or a couple days for an entire streetscape project. So the obvious solution would be to try and stand up a mobile mapping program, because you can survey LiDAR and imagery at the speed of traffic at the resolution that is very, very high. So we decided to do that. And the first project that really bought into it, aside from our own department, was the traffic asset management plan. So the city is required to maintain an asset of all their street signs and lights, among other things. The advantage of using this approach is that, yes, you can do it at the speed of the city, and you can do it all from the office once you've collected the data. So whereas we used to be sending people onto the street to look at the asset, write down the information, and take a fixed location, now we can do all of that, but remotely. And this is a significant project that is supposed to be completed by about 2029. And so we're hoping to reduce that amount of time with this system. So the first thing that you'd have to decide is, what can you afford? For us, the question was really, do we go with survey grade equipment that gives us 2 to 3 millimeters of accuracy, absolute, on every point and image? And those systems cost upwards of $1 million each. You have examples like the Leica TRK 700, the Trimble MX90, or the Regal HVA system. And those prices depend on the number of LiDAR scan heads and the number of cameras you integrate. But recently, there's been an explosion of technology kind of in the moderate scale, more in the mapping grade at 2 to 3 centimeters. And for us, 2 to 3 centimeters is enough to do our asset mapping and deploy across the entire city. And they're almost 10x cheaper to purchase and deploy. So the system that we went with was called a Mosaic 51 Meridian system. It has 6 camera heads at the top of the pyramid there, capturing 91 megapixel panoramic images. And it has a Phoenix Scout sensor on the back of HESI that captures about 640 points per second. And both are capable of very high accuracy positional information and traveling at the speed of traffic. The timeline for this project, we started thinking about this in spring of 2024. We whittled down the choices of what we would purchase and made a purchase decision and completed it by the end of 2024 and received the unit in the spring of 2025. We did an initial testing phase of 1 month, 1.5 months in the spring up until June, and then put our entire system into production for 4 months from June till about the end of October. So we hope to have the initial data sets of LiDAR and imagery in 2026, and then the analysis steps and the asset inventories ready and available to our departments by 2028. So to pull this off, there's a lot of resourcing and design that has to happen. As you saw, the City of Ottawa is unique in that it is very, very large. So our road network is over 7,000 kilometers of roads. And we need to cover each segment of road at least once. Now, the nice thing about doing mapping grade is that you only have to cover it once. In the map or in the survey applications, you have to cover it twice to do trajectory alignment. And we had the task of completing it after the snow melted and before it fell again, so from June to October. To pull this off, we had 1 month of testing where it was mostly me, but JF was involved as well. And then in the production state, we had 2 drivers working full time on the project, that for about 4.5 months. We had myself coordinating the project, pulling in the daily data sets, filing them away in our file servers and starting on post-processing. And then we had 2 supporting analysts, and a third one came on at the end to help us manage that data and fill in gaps when inevitably someone was on vacation or somebody would be sick. We also had physical assets that we had to coordinate. We had to get the right vehicle. I wanted a vehicle that had a short wheelbase and was relatively tall. So you got the smallest amount of vehicle in the car or in the images. And we settled on a Hyundai Santa Fe SUV because we could rent that relatively easy and it had rails to mount the hardware on. We also needed somewhere to store it, which is a bit hard because it's a relatively tall vehicle once it's mounted, and we couldn't take it on and off every day at the end of collection. So we found an old fire hall with really tall bay doors, which suited us perfectly. And we also needed an office space attached to it because every 3 days or so, we had to empty out the hard drives from the devices and replace them in an empty state. There's also IT infrastructure that goes into this. We had to get physical assets such as an iPad for routing. It turns out that it's actually when you're in the vehicle, you can do the routing by yourself, but the week to week of where to go and what neighborhoods to do and where gaps in the data set appear, we were coordinating from the office. ArcGIS field maps worked really well for this, and we had both a driver and a co-pilot for safety reasons. In the office, we had 2 processing towers and workstations. These are HP G6 workstations with latest generation Ada GPUs, and we upgraded the storage hardware to be really fast solid state drives so we could process up to a week at a time without needing the network. We also had a field laptop. We had a Toughbook that would run all the LiDAR operations and the data collection operations in the vehicle and troubleshoot whenever problems would arise. And we had a dedicated file server. So we went with a Synology 8-bay because it was relatively portable, and with 8 bays filled with 20 terabyte drives, we had 160 terabytes of storage, which we ran in a duplication pairs, so RAID 0, which gave us nice data duplication and redundancy. We used drive encryption, user-only access, and we used a fixed IP directly, one cable in the file server and the other end in the processing tower, so that the device essentially lived off-network through those processing towers. We also needed clean power, so we purchased an EcoFlow Delta 2 Pro. You can kind of see it in the bottom of the image here, down here, and that gave us nice clean power for an entire day of collection. Once we did all the driving, we had to post-process it all. This is where the devil's in the details. The LiDAR data itself is the pulses of the actual laser information, which gets mixed or refined by its GPS location and its inertial movement unit trajectory. We use the NRCan base station to refine that with our RhinoX correction data, if you're familiar with it. And what that does is it gives us a really clean point cloud file in LAZ format, plus a refined trajectory. And we used a software to do this called LiDAR Mill, which is a cloud-based system, and worked really well for us. On the imagery side, we used that trajectory data to really refine the location of the camera as it moved through the city. And that was integrated with the hardware manufacturer software called Mosaic Processor, which converted the 6 cameras, which are captured as MP4 frames, into equirectangular panoramic JPEGs. So that's how you get your street view bubble. Of course, just getting the raw data out from the hardware isn't enough. On the LiDAR side, we used AI classification to give us the ASPRS classes like ground, vegetation, road, building, and so on. Once that data was created, it was subsampled to a standard data rate, so like 1 point per 5 centimeters. of 3D space. And then we aligned it to our city grid system because we collected day-by-day data sets. And what we need is the data on the city grid, so it's tile by tile. Those tiles get put in our cloud in hot storage so they can be served to the web. And we're using Azure for hot storage, and we're serving from both Esri portal and investigating Cesium Ion at this time. On the imagery side, those panoramic images have a lot of PII in them, identifiable information. So to comply with the MFIPA protocols, we anonymize them using an in-house process to find faces and find license plates, and then blur them out with OpenCV. Those images are then put in a directory as a large number of files, and we create something called a frame table, which gives us the image location and a number of camera-specific parameters, like where it was and what the field of view and so on. That table of images is really useful because we can actually thin the images down. When you do the out and back in a cul-de-sac, you might be recording at one image every 3 meters, but when you go out and come back, you're actually going to be sampling it much higher than that because you have both sides of the road coming in. So with this frame table, we can actually thin it down and then provide a table of only the images that we want to provide to our cloud hosting. Because it turns out hosting many terabytes of data is pretty expensive. So that enables us to manage it, and it enables us to build our oriented imagery catalog, which is an Esri data model that allows us to provide a Street View-like experience in the browser. The nice thing about this is that it's mostly automated in FME, where you've got a number of transformers that have programming code or Python callers inside them. So it's all custom, but it's laid out in a really nice way to automate. Once we have the data sets at our fingertips, we actually have to do the work to find the things inside them. And for that, because of the volume of the data sets, we can only use machine learning. So we've got standard AI classification from the software vendors, such as Bentley or Esri or like a Cyclone, and they can do the standard ground, trees, and roads. And so we're doing that. That's what you see in the image. But we're moving towards custom classes for training so that we can get to a more fine-grained results, such as our specific bench types or our specific asset types on the side of the road. And so we're investigating machine learning methods like PointCNN and PointNet and a few others. On the imagery side, it's a little more complicated. So whereas many commercially available data sets or models can find basic types like a street light, our asset inventory needs us to go a little bit further. So we need to know what the different types of lamp heads are. And luckily that there is actually a fairly robust corpus of machine learning methods that you can pull from to do that type of work. The challenge with it is that you actually have to build a model yourself from that point or refine the public models. So this requires a lot of training data to be generated by our staff. And Street View imagery has a bunch of interesting caveats, let's say. So for one, Street View images start far away, and as you drive to them, they come close up. So they start as really blurry objects. And so when you're labeling data, you don't want to label it if it's too blurry, or else it provides a kind of a bad example to learn from. Another wrinkle is that you have a mix of really small objects like lamp heads and really large objects like street poles. And when you're doing machine learning, the way you take a very large high megapixel image is you decompose it into little tiles. But if you're doing little square tiles to find small objects, it's not going to do a very good job of doing a street pole, which would take an entire column of tiles. So you have to design your method of finding objects around those particular wrinkles. The final thing that makes it challenging is that Street View imagery is very chaotic. So whereas with a lot of industrial applications, you're trying to find differences between, let's say, candy bars going by a conveyor belt, where it's an individual wrapper with a very specific look on a white background. This is street assets that may be of varying quality and shape because they age on a varying number of backgrounds like sky, building, vegetation, complex environments. So those all make it a challenge. Luckily, we have some really good software that helps us. We use a cloud software called RoboFlow, and this helps us with a bunch of different things. One, it helps us keep our classes, the individual things that we're trying to find, manageable. We started with a relatively small number of assets, but we've increased it as we've gained confidence. We started with just 12 different signs, and now we have 30 or more signs that we're looking for in the right-of-way. It enables us to maintain also the image sampling and the assignment of who is doing the work. So we have right now in Q1 next year, we're going to deploy this to about 5 people labeling at the same time, and I can assign images and review the work that they're doing using the management of that platform. And I can adjust the sampling rate. So right now we're only firing 1 out of every 100 images that we collected, so that we can get, that's at 3 meters, it's 1 image every 300 meters of driving. But we can change that as we go and see how we progress. The other challenge is we have anonymized imagery for those MFIPA rules, but there's false positives, of course, right? License plates are text on a white background, but so are signs. So you do kind of have to be aware that you're not always going to have perfect data to label. The nice thing is that because we're doing the training online using RoboFlow, all the imagery and the classes all sit together so that we can train the model directly on their platform with their credit system. And it's training the model actually isn't very expensive. What tends to get really expensive is when you then fire your 1.5 million or more images to then train or not to train, but to find the objects that you're looking for. So that's where we download the model ourselves and we run it on our dedicated workstations. But if you do it all right, you end up with a data set where you've got all the images with all of the classifications or the objects found in them. Now, this is a model in progress shot that I'm giving you, so there's tons of false positives and false negatives that I could be honest about in here. I'm sure you can find some of them. But what we're doing is we're not only finding all the objects, but we're attaching IDs to them, so we can track them from one image to the next as you approach and move past it, which you'll see is important in the next step. So here you've got various types of poles, like aluminum poles, and different types of lights, like acorn lights. And here's a stop sign, which is a good example of a false positive. It's basically a stop sign on a advertisement. So that's not what we want to find, but it shows up. Now, one of the challenges that comes next is what we're doing is we're just finding images or objects in 2D images, right? We only have the geolocation of the car when it was taking the photo, which is at the center of the 6 cameras. We don't actually have the location in 3D of where each of these objects is. So the step that comes next is actually geolocating it. So if we have an individual camera or an individual light post, we see that light post as the car approaches it and as the car moves beyond it. So by tracking across the images, we can actually start to see and use some trigonometry in a simple way to try and find out what the 3D position of that is and plot it. Here we're doing it on a simplified graph, but we're doing it in 3D geospace. Of course, it's not quite that simple. Just using ray casting and object tracking gives us about 3 meters of accuracy on the asset, which isn't good enough for our purposes. But it's in a multi-step process. So first we find the objects and we track them and we cluster them so we know it's distinct objects. Then we do the ray casting. And then we get into some of the more computer vision methods of bundle adjustment to refine the actual pixel that we're tracking in 3D space, because it's not sufficient just to use the centroid of the detection box. And then fourth, and which is what we're doing right now, is we're developing the means to do actual structure from motion modeling. So you make a 3D point cloud of the images in 3D space, and that's going to bring us well under a meter of accuracy, which is well within the needs of the asset management project. Important to note is, how do we know if we're getting it right or wrong? We actually sent field crews at the same time the car was running to go and collect with an RTK unit and field data collection to get the physical location of known assets, so that when we apply the machine learning model, we know whether it did a good job or not in the determination of where things are. So when it runs well, it looks kind of like this, where you see these rays being cast and identifying the objects and putting them in. So the image here is showing you a couple of different things. This is ArcGIS, and this is like half a morning of data collection, or maybe one morning section, where we have all the underlying there. The green dots are the individual photo locations, and then these are all the assets that we found. So it's showing lights and signs. Each one of those things that we found has an ID attached to it and an attribute table, which allows us to actually click on the image that was used to detect it, and we can verify that it's actually finding the right thing, or it's doing a false positive and finding something it shouldn't have. So at the end of the project, what this has allowed us to do is, one, create an entire 3D city of LiDAR. Two, do a full oriented imagery viewer, which I hope there's time for JF to show us in a few minutes of what that looks like. And then we're making the departmental data set, starting with traffic signs and streetlights. But the really interesting thing is this is a go once, like collect once, but it's now that we've done it, we've got so many departments reaching out to try and learn more. Forestry is asking if we can find all the individual trees and determine whether they are city-owned or privately owned, so who has to maintain it. Parks equipment and what state it's in, so we can forecast when we need to replace it. Snow capacity, do we have to send all the snow to our snow dumps, or can it be left at the side of the road? Public safety and our emergency operations center is interested in being able to deploy in a rapidly evolving situation. And our climate change and invasive species folks are looking at things like wild parsnip and determining how prevalent our wild parsnip is across the city. So that's what I had for you. JF, I think, is standing by, and he's going to do a quick demo of our reality capture.
A very, very quick show of what we're working on right now. And this application will be available to all of our internal staff members probably Q2 2026. But basically, loading all of the entire LiDAR data sets that has been completely classified and merged into gridded cells to be quickly visualized in the web. This is on your regular, I'm running Chrome right now, and then using our image catalog, be able to bring in the classified features directly into the environment. The idea is also to have all of the assets pulled from the AI and the machine learning into this environment, so that any of the users can select a feature directly into this environment and change the attributes directly. So for example, I'm selecting a tree here, and I could update the information that was produced by the machine learning and the AI product. And this is our base map. It includes everything from underground. So I'm looking underground right now with all of our assets and connecting to the real-time asset inspection platform that I talked earlier, to the complete city's digital twin covering the close to 3,000 square kilometers. So in a snapshot, this is what it will look like next year for all city staff. Randall, you want to finish off?
Well, I think maybe that's probably a lot. If we wanted to jump right to questions, I don't know how much, Omar. Is that okay?
Yeah, we've got a couple of minutes here. If anybody wants to just put their hand up, then we can find you. Suleiman, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thanks, Omar. Thanks to the presenters. Really good, interesting work. Just a quick question, Michael. When you spoke about actually finding the location of the assets, I was wondering just curious why you didn't use the LiDAR since you're collecting that anyway, when you're trying to go from the image.
So using the LiDAR to find the individual objects, the training for that is also quite difficult to find the specific sub-classification types. And it's just a little bit harder than finding them than in the images. The nice thing is that because we have the two complementary data sets, we're actually going to be using both. So whereas we're finding it in the images, we're relaying that location back to a sparse cloud to do the refinement, and then the point cloud itself to get a very fine adjustment. And the hope is that downstream, we'll actually be able to find the condition assessment of things. So for example, if you have a street sign that's been bent, that's something that the signs folks spend a lot of time on, is replacing bent signs. We might be able to find every bent sign in the city in one go.
Yeah, no, really good work. I think, Michael, if you've got time, we can chat maybe offline after this if Janneke might be able to connect us. But a mega project. Great work, everyone at the City of Ottawa. Really appreciate the presentation.
Thanks, Solomon. If you can see the screen, Michael has the contact information for all three of our presenters there. Daniel.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much. Really impressive, and obviously coming from Esri Canada, fantastic use of ArcGIS and Esri technology. We love to see that. Really impressive. My question is, I'm wondering if, given the amount of data you're collecting and the frequency of updating it, you mentioned several uses of it around planning and asset management, things like that. Is there a plan to make use of this as well for more on an operational level, day-to-day operations, situational awareness, emergency response, or incident management, things like that?
I can answer that, or Randall can. My vision is that I don't see Google Street View open on any of our computers inside the city again. The brass tacks of it is that we don't have control over what we can do with that imagery. We don't have control over the resolution of that imagery in terms of what can be seen inside it. And we don't have a good indication of when it was last generated. So often you'll see people trying to get as-built conditions on 5-year-old imagery. And so ideally that isn't the case.
And just to add to this for Daniel, yes, we're already using other ArcGIS application. Field maps is one of those that are used daily by all of our inspectors. VGIS is integrating into the ecosystem also to bring the data in real time. This digital twin is not a static image. It's a dynamic living environment, and we hope that, with the IoT piece coming in this year, we're going to make it even more enticing for some of the clients that we're trying to cater to in the future.
I would just add, and there Ken had mentioned here in a question about with the LiDAR survey and intersection and corridors, information feeding directly into connected vehicles. I think it's a kind of both directions, right? It's also getting the information from connected vehicles into our digital twin to be able to visually see what's going on. We have in 2029, I believe it's Ministry of Transportation is replacing a number of other bridges that through our downtown core, and it's basically like when we cut the bridge over the canal for rapid replacement, that will shut down the city because there's very few ways to get across the Rideau River and the Rideau Canal, except for through the Queensway. So it's really going to shut down the city. So if we can actually plan how everybody's moving by using origin destination information and visualize the way we need to move traffic, we can actually get people to divert where appropriate, right? So there's a lot of those kind of things and technologies that we can use. And as Randall and the team were saying, the IoT component is starting to get the real-time information. We have, through some of our work, we have real-time status of our signal information that we can actually display internally. So there's a lot of things that I think are forthcoming, but this is just kind of a tip of the iceberg. So
there's one other person who had a question. His name is Ahmed Rahimi. Very interesting for traffic signs. Can the machine learning determine the condition of signs, or are they put in manually? As a general question, how much manual upkeep is needed to work with the data after LiDAR data gathering?
That's a good question. So we have first order type of things that we're trying to do, like find them all. And then the second order is, of course, do condition assessment. So one thing that's important is finding out if they're rusting or if they're bent, are signs. So signs that are rusting, we currently don't have a good way of tracking that at all, other than going and looking at them. So that's one thing I'm going to do next. And then in terms of how they're actually shaped, that's something we could do with the LiDAR. An interesting thing that we had midsummer is someone asked me for a sign, like a billboard sign over top of the roadway, what hardware was used to attach it, because they wanted to send a crew out with the right tools because a non-standard bit of equipment was used. And so we were able to go through the imagery, look at the backside of the sign, give them measurements of exactly what it was and how big it was. So they were able to go and actually fix it the first time.
And Michael, maybe you guys can just talk about there is a plan to continuously be collecting data in multiple through whether it's the LiDAR, the mobile mapping and so forth. Maybe do you want to just talk a little bit about that and then we'll wrap up?
Sure. I mean, I can speak about the mobile program. JF would be, and Randall would be better suited for the overall data collection picture. But for the mobile program specifically, we're going to be collecting every other year. And that's about appropriate for how long it takes to process all the different steps of it. It's about 4 or 5 months of collection, and then you've got to follow through all the different steps and procedures to find it all and do all the assessments and get it published. That amount of time will decrease as time goes by, clearly. But that's about what we think we're going to do. And then in the intervening years, we're going to be doing special projects. So forestry has asked us to do a project, or parks has asked us to do a project, or going out at the exact right time to find out the invasive species spread. Those are things that you wouldn't do in a normal collection year, but we absolutely can do in the intervening years.
Yeah. I would just add, we also want to capture new developments, so new neighborhoods that are coming online as part of, tracking growth and development would also be something we would do in the intervening years. But yeah, excellent. Thanks, Michael.
Great. Well, with that, Randall, JF, Michael, thank you so much for presenting. Hopefully this has been enlightening to everybody on the call to see what we at the City of Ottawa are doing and are moving towards in terms of our GIS and geospatial stuff. You have the contact information from all three of them there if you want to reach out and ask any more detailed questions. And with that, thanks for joining I think it's the final Tech Tuesday for ITS Canada for the 2025. So great way to wrap up and enjoy the rest of your day, and happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you, Omar, for bringing this to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you
having
very
us.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Right.